So, herzlich willkommen zu meinem Track Azure Static Web Apps. I'm gonna switch to English now, and I will try my best to explain everything in English for you folks out there. So I'm talking about Azure Static Web Apps, and especially made with or programmed with language and browser framework, which names is Blazor. So let me talk a little about what you can expect from this session, and let me talk about who am I. So my name is Ralf Richter, and I'm from Dabei. Dabei is a software conducting company, the software developing company, and I work for multiple customers, usually for projects. And we're located in Munich, Stuttgart, and Friedrichshafen, near to the Lake of Constance. And last one is the main location for us, and we belong all so the other are co-branches like Munich and Stuttgart, and I'm working for Munich. First of all. And second, Dabei is conducting software since 22 years almost. It's pretty much the same amount I'm doing that, but 2 years more than me. Okay. I don't have to say that we're like 100% experts. 60% of us are software developers, and the other 40% are professional business consultants. And the special thing about Dabei is that we understand business and talk IT. So we're conducting successful projects with our customers. Okay, cool. That said, I have to go to my slides and say what to expect from today's session. And I'm sorry, it is in German, and I switched to English because I wanted to be more inclusive. The thing you can expect from this session is that we will talk about Azure Static Web Apps, what's in, and we'll have a short note on Blazor, and next we go for a tutorial about or a demonstration about Azure Static Web Apps, how to deploy and so on. And then last thing is I'll share for sure insights with you, what to do and what not to do, how's tooling and so on. What we cannot achieve is a deep dive. Due to the time, we cannot go in deep into Azure Static Web Apps. For sure, this is really cool. But there's one more thing I want to share with you. Come on, guys. You can win crazy prizes. So there is one thing you can have. The cool thing, which is here, let me go. This is what you can win for sure. This is the starter kit from IFM. It is something you can conduct cool static. You can gain cool IoT projects with that. And the other thing is that we're going to have here, or what we're going to have here is an IoT Edge, an original IoT Edge by Seconet. So the small one. But that's industrial grade IoT Edge device, which you can use to set up your first IoT Edge project. And I would say that's really a cool thing. So go and have a look on our page and scratch your ticket there. It's virtual and it's fun. Thank you for joining us here. And one more thing, you cannot lose. There's always a win in for you, okay? Cool. That's said, let's go on. Okay, I have to activate my slides again. Okay. What is Azure Static Web App? That's pretty simple to explain. And on how do we do? We do have a static web app. And the static web app exists or consists of two things. That is a web app, and it is an Azure function, let's say. And you can use your code to programmatically make them functional. And therefore you can use, for example, for the function Node.js, for example, or for sure .NET. And you can use for your static content something like Vue.js, Angular, or whatever you want to, and Blazor. So I'm going to use for this tutorial or for this session Blazor, and on the other hand I will use .NET. And there's one more special thing here. If you have a look on the GitHub Actions page, so if you go here, it is like it will make a free gift to you. In the way it offers you a free GitHub Action setup, and you just deploy your static web app, and when you do that, you can select whether you go for what framework you're using for deploying, or which template, and then it automatically deploys your web app or your static web app to Azure, which is pretty nice. And you can set up it with Azure DevOps, for sure. Okay. Let's have a look onto the features of a static web app. I mean, the first thing which is very obvious is it is serverless at last, or at least. And you can do web hosting with it to put static content on. You can have the integrated API, which is the Azure function. It has the first tier GitHub implementation, which is also pretty nice. And then you can make use of Azure to globally share your content by Azure Static Web Apps. And for sure, you have there the free SSL certificates, and you can add your customer domain or custom domain. And the next two things are the things I like a lot, which is you have authentication and authorization built in. And those two are really kind, because when you go and setting up, or when you're going to set up an application, a modern application, and you want to have an idea about authorization and security, and you want to go and have a role-based management for your users inside your application, that can be tough sometimes. But with a static web app, you have the possibility and the opportunity to do that automatically within that tool and the service. So the service itself offers you the functionality, and you don't have to take care of it. You neither have to implement it. Okay, so have a look on Blazor. Blazor is really easy to explain, because with Blazor it is in short noted, it is like JavaScript from C#. We will not kill JavaScript anyhow with Blazor, because Blazor is still the thing you have to have, and I'll show you later in the code. Then we have the possibility to write code within .NET and C#, which is Blazor at last. So yeah, it's just a Razor page. We have the WebAssembly component, which I like a lot. You can have with Blazor also the server component, but I wouldn't say that this is so cool. And we have the possibility to have a progressive web app at the end. And progressive web apps is something like if you use Teams, and you go to teams.microsoft.com and open Teams, you can add Edge to, or you can use Edge to add Teams to your to make it as a progressive web app available on your desktop by applying it as an application, right? Okay, cool. So that said, let's have a closer look to it. It is open source, which I like a lot, because open source rules the world. And with open source, you go and have the possibility to add your own code and functionalities to Blazor, which makes it more suitable for you if you like to. You have to have an idea about HTML and CSS. Without HTML and CSS, you can't do any styling for your web application. So by that said, a little front-end thing we have to do. So, and you have to know a little about the Blazor syntax, where you code with C#, and then you have to decide whether you go with Blazor Server or Blazor WebAssembly. Okay. Let's first have a look on Blazor Server. It's pretty easy because you have on the server side all the components and the .NET runtime, and you have all these small things put together to offer your service to a user, right? Then we have the browser, and in the browser we just execute some HTML, CSS, and compile JavaScript. With that, you have your application done. Okay. And if we go for Blazor WebAssembly, with Blazor WebAssembly, we do a little around all that stuff. We are not using a web server for our stuff in the application. We just have the data inside our server, and we just use a web API to make the data available for our application. So I find that very important because you save a lot of you have a lot of abilities to make your web application then mobile and working offline, for instance. So within your client, there is a short or small thing which will be downloaded, which is the Blazor WebAssembly at the end of the day, and that consists of the app code. It has the .NET runtime inside, and we call that then a WebAssembly at the end. That means also it has, like, I would say it is, you have to think of, because you have to download the WebAssembly first, and then your application will run inside the browser. Okay, let's go over to the demo, and I want to show you first on how a structure or a code could look like, or let's start over with the implementation in Azure itself. So since I'm a little bit, I don't want to go by a CLI, I will go with the portal to show how the static web app looks like in Azure. And therefore, I will move on to one of my subscriptions. So here we go. And I have this small demo, which is now 3 weeks old. And with that demo, I will show you everything. Let me switch to duplicate my screen so that I can see it easier by clicking. Okay. So. This is the current situation of a deployed Blazor web app. That means the deployed Blazor web app has a few settings like which you can see here. Okay, so let's go on to the app. First of all, you'll get a randomly string where you can connect to your web app. And the next thing is then you have here an overview about some statistics of your application. On the left hand, you have the usual and common things which you expect there. There are a few, let's say, specials. So with the configuration, you just configure the environments for your Azure function, for sure, since the WebAssembly goes to the client and will be executed there, and you cannot bring some environmental variables to that client, for sure not. So it's just for the API. You can set up application insights. You can set up a custom domain, which I like a lot. That goes by checking a TXT entry or something like that, so that it is ensured that you're the owner of that DNS or domain. And within the function section, they'll be displayed every API which is deployed to your service. And as you can see, we have here the slot production. The nice and cute thing of static web apps is that when you have a code change and you put that into a pull request with GitHub, it'll open more pull request stage here or environment in the static web app, and then it will bring you the possibility to check your code live before deploying to the production, which I like a lot. And that functionality is only available with the first year implementation of GitHub. What you see here below is that there is our function. The only function I've deployed for the moment is the weather forecast, which is the standard template for static web apps with Blazor, and I will share the slides afterwards so that you can go and have the same tutorial like I had. Then we have here environments, which I was talking about. So we have our staging and so on. We have role management, and that was the thing I was talking about a few minutes before, because that comes for free. So with each user you're inviting to your application, you have the possibility to add a role to it. And there are two default roles, so authorized and not authorized. So when a user comes in, he is currently not authorized, and the second one, he is authorized to use the application. And then you can decide to have like an admin, or you can have root, or a manager, whatever. You can just make it to the needs you have, like. And then we have that identity stuff here. So that means you can add a managed identity to your service and make these or use that service identity to access, for instance, a key vault or blob storage or something like that. Okay. For sure, we have to pay our service, and the good news is there is a free plan, which is still valid, and from my understanding, it is okay to get started with static web apps. I have subscribed for the standard, which is okay for me now, because it's always like I'm not hitting that the values here, but I wanted to have the power underneath. Good, so that's the service on Azure, and that's how it looks like. And I've said we're gonna have a look onto how it is deployed now, right? And I will go. So this is the URL, and we'll open it, and there we are. This is our first Blazor app, and we'll look in a few minutes. We will have a look onto our code. So we have those three sections, and it's functional, working already. So we have the counter here. Then we have fetch data, and fetch data comes up with this. It calls an API, and it comes up with a it is a random weather digits inside here, so it's not really something from a weather service. But it's functional. And the other thing I want to share with you is not this one. I wanted to show you on how looks the action, the GitHub action, which was deployed from the deployment with the Azure portal, as I've deployed the static web app there. So if we have a look into, you see this script is set up from the deployment process. You have a connection from Azure to GitHub, and then it deploys that script. And then it goes through and manages the build, and after the build it will deploy, and then it will publish, and then will clean up itself. And the result is what I've showed you. Good. Okay, that was a quick introduction into it. Let's have a look onto the code, because the code is not that much uninteresting, I would say. As the most of us are developers working in a .NET world, I decided to go with the Blazor implementation. And the cool thing of that is you can start pretty easy and pretty fast by staying and sticking with your technologies you're knowing, and set up an application for you without having the need to understand every front-end thing. So I won't say that I'm then a full-stack developer, how that is called, and I'm still in belief there is none really full-stack developer out, but that's just my small opinion. So with that, you have the opportunity to start fast with sticking your technologies, and the structure of such an application is pretty easy. So we have the section shared, and as .NET developers, we are used to have our objects and everything which we will reuse between the projects, and so we do here. So we have the weather forecast, which is an data object used within the API and in the client. So we share it. On the other hand, we have the API itself. That's pretty easy as well. So we do have the API thing here as a project file. And if we go into, we just have the weather forecast function, and that's it. So this is the whole function with a small method to generate the numbers. And that's it. So with this tiny piece of code, we go and have a fully functional application. Within that, we have clients, we have pages, and the pages you've seen in the application before, which is here the counter. Then we have the let's say the start page. And there's something I really like a lot, because this is the survey prompt here. And you remember when we were looking to the current implementation, it is a gray field, and you have text and link inside. And if we go back to code, it is just survey, title, and then a text. And I remember this text was in the gray box, but there is no link in that implementation here. And how that works is, we have here shared, and there we have this tiny cool, how is it called? It is called survey, and survey is, here it is. It's the survey component. And with Blazor, there is that cool gift that you can use components. So you set up a component which can be used multiple times within your code everywhere on each page, but you code it just one time. Okay, I would say so good so far. What is the tooling? For me, as you see, the tooling is Visual Studio Code. With Visual Studio Code, you get a full-blown code editor supporting and aiding you in developing code in multiple ways. It has an implementation for supporting .NET. It has its implementation for HTML and CSS. And you don't have to take care, because the extensions for Visual Studio Code by using Azure Static Web Apps are so cool, you even can deploy from Visual Studio Code in 2 seconds a fully blown static web app. But it's not all. If you decide to go with static web apps and you want to use static web apps, I would say you have to have Azure Static Web App CLI. And how is that working? So you understood now that there is a service which brings up a function, and it brings up, on the other hand, that web page. And now you have to combine both and to emulate on your computer. And you have to use the Azure Active Directory on behind to do authorization and authentication. So you need a router in between as well. And there's one more thing I want to add here. You can easily protect your API and everything else by adding routes. And into the route you add just a role, and then you say allow or not allow. Okay, so you just say this route, and you add allowed roles, and then type the roles in the config file. I will show you later. And then this route is protected from being accessed by anybody who's not with that, who's not coming with that route. So let's raise our software, and let's emulate the front end portion and the back end portion and the routing in between. So, as you can see, it raises, it just starts with the build process and everything will be done there. Then we set up our Azure function, which will be emulated. Then it goes up with the localhost 5000, which is our web app itself. And then we have this URL where we go to and can request the service itself. So I've been a little busy before. I've prepped myself, and I go to that port, and as you can see, it loads, and the local function is working fine. So I will demonstrate even the API is working fine, because otherwise the data is not here, will not be shown. Nice. Okay, let's have a look onto the slides that I don't miss a part I want to tell with you or share. Insights. The one thing we were on is that we've spoken about Visual Studio Code and Azure Static Web App CLI to be used as a tool. And then we have another thing I want to talk about. The critical point once you're getting started with your first web application is, let's use the counter once. We now have the digit 6 here. And if we switch and go back, the count is 0, okay? And when you want to keep the state on a web page, which you're losing because it's stateless, you have to think a little about that. And the thing you want to implement here is Fluxor, because Fluxor is an implementation of a Redux pattern. And what means a Redux pattern? A Redux pattern is simply the extraction of a state from a Blazor component. So that means when you put the state away, you have to manage two things. On how is the state coming to the component, and on how you will manipulate the state, right? And Fluxor is giving you this circle of concerns. So it implements a store where the state is in. It implements something which is called as affect, which you can name also like event handler, and with those two you're pretty set up, because using an effect you can manipulate the state with an effect manager, and with a store manager you just have access to the state for that page. And that means if I would implement it on this page here, I could click, 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 and it goes up to 10, and then I will go to another page and come back, and the component counter will go to the store and have access to it, and will get back the 6 and represent it back to me. So the state is no longer bind to our component at that state. So keep calm and manage your state. I would say that's a really important thing. Okay, we have had a look onto the sample project. We have had a look about the project structure, which is API, client, and the shared thing. I really like that, because that gives you a clearance or a clear overview about how your project should look like, and everything in one place. And I don't want to miss to tell you, you can use the built-in functions with a static web app, and you also have the opportunity to bring in your own functions, which is sometimes the better idea, even in especially moments when you're using the full-blown function stack and you want to use every functionality of it. So that's really important to know that you can bring in your own function then. It still works like a charm, and you still have the opportunity to configure your Blazor web app to be protected. Okay, I've started around talking about this navigation thing, and this is the way, or the place where you have to put it in. And at the very first moment, you just have there that fallback for the indexed HTML, so that the browser has an idea where to fall back to when I want to go to the home page. And in the exact same here, you open an array of routes where you can put in to routes to your websites or API, whatever you want to protect to, and give the idea of load roles and so on. The pity is That don't work with Blazor. So you have to set it up slightly a little bit different to that. You have to enter here, I would say, the outer worlds. I will come back to that in a minute. And you have to add the protection for the API, because that's going here. Why is that not working with Blazor? You have to just think about Blazor and WebAssembly. We are going to use the client's browser to execute our DLL. And on that moment, it is no longer given to be routed through our server, right? So we cannot protect routes on the client because we don't have the power there, right? Okay. So we have to implement a little bit other way to do the authorization. The good news is Anthony Shu provided a sample project and you can just explore it and it's pretty easy. Okay, let me go back to my slides. Azure front door and Azure front door, that's pretty important. So if you want to have your application good secured, you want to use Azure front door. Azure front door brings you two features. The first thing is that there is the content, it's a content delivery network. That means you can share the content all over different regions, that your customer is always nearer to the application than the original region. Like for example, an US citizen using our application could use a US region of Azure where our CDN is providing the application. So the downloading of our application will be pretty fast instead of being downloaded from Europe. And it protects your application with a firewall. And I would really say that this is an important thing, and let's look how it works. To have this CDN thing, you have to deploy your application on multiple regions, which is for sure clear, I hope. And then our Azure front door, so for your remote guys, our Azure front door this here will be used to spread the service or the traffic towards the next location. And it does it for us without anything to do from our side. So with that technology, you can have another nice service protecting your application, your modern application, and bringing a faster service for your customer. So really two important things, I would say, combined in a product which is a must-have at that situation. Role management with the Azure function. I like this topic a lot. There is in the documentation of Microsoft a small example on how to set up roles dynamically. So I've showed you in the service, in the portal already, that there is the possibility to invite a user to application and you can enter a role to him or her. If you want to make that service more dynamic, which I would completely appreciate and understand, you can use Azure Active Directory, and there you just put in a group and you put users in that group. For instance, application manager. Then you have to set up a small configuration, which is, I believe it is 8 rows code in the static config, and with that code, you have also to implement Azure function, which is, for instance, the name get roles. So what happens now is the user logs into the application, and with his login, he triggers that function, and the function goes to the Azure Active Directory and gets the groups from which are configured in that function. And after the pull, the service will look into the function, and the name must be in one of that groups collected from the Azure Active Directory. And the group will be mapped to a role, which can be the application manager. And after that's ready, the user will get the role application manager. And enough of a little breakout. Let me show you on how a user example looks like. So for now, I'm not connected. I'm not logged into into this system, so into this application. And I can do that, and I've told you it is for free inside. I just go here and say .auth/login/AID. That's it. I don't have to do anything else. And then all of a sudden, it pops up and asks me for my credentials, and then I go here and say, yes, here, these are my credentials. I have to give a consent to it. Then I grant it, and then it goes back. For sure, this is a demo application. I haven't implemented anything to show up my user. But if I now go back to .auth/me, you can see that the user object is now presenting the standard roles, which are anonymous and authenticated, right? And it states my user and my user ID and so on. Cool, huh? I haven't done anything for implementation here, nor configured Active Directory application, nor configured anything in the Static Web App. I like that a lot. And the cool thing on this is, if you want to use it by yourself, and you want to develop with that thing, you just go here, and then you enter the same shit, auth, and then you go here, and then the cool thing is you can emulate a user. I call that one here Andreas. And the next thing is I give him a role, which is manager. I could say also general manager, but the manager is okay for me. And then I go and save. Now it goes back to the application, because it's the same application which hasn't any implementation for representation of the user. And then we go here and say .auth/me to see what the user looks like. And this is the user. We have Andreas, and we have that role manager inside. And I would say that's pretty cool. So you can start working with that, with your application, to emulate everything you want. Okay, let's go back to our slides. Cool. I would say that's it for now. I don't have to add anything more to it. To deploy an Azure function, a static web app, you don't have to do that much. It is really a quick win. You just go into the portal, or you use the Azure CLI, or you use Visual Studio Code. And then you click on go ahead in the portal to deploy the function, and that's it. The only difference is when you're using Azure DevOps that you have to claim for the deployment key. But that's also offered within the wizard in the Azure portal, so it's not really that complicated to get it run. Okay, cool. I would really say this is everything I have to share with you by Static Web App, and let me see on how our chat looks like for the moment. I don't know, do I have the chat open somewhere? No question? Thanks, Martin. So I would say I'm really done. I'm good in time?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Then I hit. Go for it.